glad I didn't peak in high school, 'cause my best days will be in the past. I know, looking back, it ain't all bad, but damn, I'm glad I didn't peak in high school.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 5th season of Unlearning Youth Group, the most controversial and potentially most divisive season we have had yet. We're the podcast where we take a look at all the things we learned back in youth group, find the good, unlearn the bad, and figure out where the heck we go from here. If we haven't met, my name is Jonathan Caron, and we're joined as always by our co-host, Mr. Eric Williams. Eric, say hey to the people before they leave us.
This feels really good. I mean, year 5, if you think our podcast is like a 5-year-old. And so this season is going to be very controversial and very, opinionated, like a 5-year-old is what I would say.
Yeah. So we have recorded 6 episodes so far. This episode's coming out on Labor Day, September 5th. So we've recorded 6 of the 8 episodes of this season. And for those that are new to us, this entire season is about government and politics and how many of the issues we're facing today have been co-opted into the church, and that a lot of the things that we were taught don't actually line up to what historical Christianity has. And as we go into the midterm elections, if you're listening to this as it comes out, we are leading up into the 2022 midterm elections. So we're going to pull off the road of some of the stuff that we normally talk about and turn our focus towards a lot of stuff that have made their way into the church over the last 20 or 30 or 40 years.
And I think when we first started talking about this, it was spring, right? We were talking about in the spring of 2022. And even as we started recording within the last 6 episodes that we've been recording, I didn't even think that things could get this weird, but they've definitely just gotten weirder since we've started recording. And so the amount of stuff that is changing literally from the time that we conceptualized this season to now is amazing. And there's no doubt that as you're listening to this, some of the things we've already recorded, major things are probably going to change between the first, when we recorded episode 1 and when it actually drops.
Absolutely. And I want to show you why we're doing this episode, and then we're going to give you some ground rules for this season. So if you're new to us, we want you to know why we're moving away from just like basic theology and approach to church and moving to politics for this season. It's because a survey in 2021 determined that 33% of pastors have said political division is causing them to consider leaving ministry altogether. So if politics is causing that big of a divide that a third of our pastors are considering leaving, I think it's important for us to spend time discussing how we got here so that we can train up a generation of people who approach politics and government in a healthier way than what we have been taught and the way the church currently approaches it, because it's yucky out there right now.
Yucky describes it very well. And I think that for me, this season is really helping me, but also what I'd like to see everybody else is like, how can we take a look at our political viewpoint through an honest view of our religious or beliefs and our religion, as opposed to the other way around. I think what's happening a lot in the last year, really in the last 4 to 6 years, is we're starting to see some people expose that instead of having a biblical worldview of things, you're actually having a political worldview, and that is shifting your interpretation of what you believe biblically.
And that may not be you. Hopefully, my guess is people listening to this, that's probably not you. It's probably the people you interact with. So a lot of what we're doing this season is to educate you on the history so that you can have those conversations and you can teach your kids better, but you can also talk to your parents and the crazy uncle and all the people who are saying things that just don't line up with what your beliefs say, but you've never taken time to dive. So this season's actually, there's some places that are super educational and that we've taken more of a classroom setting to like teach you the history of things more so than conversational. Yep. So we get to that, but we've been playing by like 6 basic ground rules of what this season is not and what it is. And you will hear this in every single episode from this season. So here are the ground rules. This season is not about trying to convince you to vote a certain way. There's only one episode of the 6 where we do that, or we tell you our opinion. We're pretty open-handed with most stuff.
Yeah.
Rule number 2, we are not about telling you why you should vote for one party or the other. We're not going to do that. Rule number 3, we're not going to shame you into feeling guilty about who you voted for in the past or who you plan to vote for in the future. Here's what we're going to do. Rule number 4, we're going to look at how some topics have been co-opted by politicians and political strategists who have used the church for political gain. Number 5, we're going to show you how there are issues that Christians must care about while acknowledging the liberty we have to come to different conclusions on how to best fix those issues. Ultimately, rule number 6, we're hoping to reframe the role of politics within our Christian worldview.
Mm-hmm. It feels very much like we're taking a top-down approach, a little bit more, not necessarily objective because we're not objective, but it's not coming from one angle or another, and definitely not with an agenda to force people voting one way or another or to feel bad about their votes.
You'll hear our opinion come out in places, definitely, but more often than not, we actually say, hey, this is my opinion, but you can have a different one. You have the liberty to apply your faith to politics and government in a different way than I do.
Yeah, can we agree on concepts? Can we agree on the overall value? We may differ in the way that we approach it. We may think that this candidate or that candidate or this party or that party is going to achieve those goals the best, but let's at least walk through it with open eyes and acknowledge what we're actually saying when we're voting one way or the other.
And none of this, you can't be a Christian if you vote for blank. We're trying to get rid of that and show you how that actually doesn't exist. So what are we actually talking about? Eric, let's run through the episodes we're talking about. What will next week, September 12th, what are we talking about there?
Politics and government. What's our mindset going to be? How we should approach it? I think that same thing of like, are we taking a political viewpoint first and then, shoehorning our religious beliefs into it and finding verses to proof text it, or what should our actual approach be for politics and government when it comes to religion?
And in that episode, we look into the history of how we got to where we are today and how church culture became so political here.
Yes.
Then in episode 2, we're talking about Democrats and Republicans and the tribalism that comes within political parties. Episode 3 is Eric's favorite one of the season.
Favorite one, Christian nationalism. I firmly believe that Christian nationalism, first of all, we'll talk about what it is, what it isn't, why some words, and we'll do this all throughout the season for different things, but why some words have meaning and others have lost their meaning. But really, what are the history and background of Christian nationalism and what the implications are for the future, because it's a pretty hot button issue right now.
Episode 4 is racism, and specifically the church's history in that, and how the Bible has been whitewashed in our culture today, how we completely neglected some of the African church history, that it has a strong and rich history that would have changed the way a lot of the world really functioned if we actually acknowledge them.
And spoiler alert, the fact that Jesus and many people in the Bible weren't white.
Moses was an old white guy with a white beard. That's what the movie showed me.
You saw Prince of Egypt, right? You saw Charlton Heston in 10 Commandments. Come on.
Jesus looked like Joel Houston. Stop it.
That's right. Exactly. With a perm.
Episode 5 is one of the most controversial ones, if not the most controversial one we'll do all season. And that one's on abortion. But we're not going to try to argue with you that abortion is good. Neither one of us agree with that. What we're going to talk about specifically is the mindset that you can't be a Christian and vote for pro-choice candidates. What we're going to do, this episode's the longest one of the season, and we really look at a history of the church, what the history of abortion and pro-choice versus pro-life looked like in the church. And spoiler alert with that one, the evangelical world had a totally different view up until 1978 than they do now. So the goal with that one, again, is not to convince you to be pro-choice or to be pro-life. It's to show you that the idea of saying you can't be a Christian and vote for pro-choice candidates is absolutely factually, historically wrong. And we'll talk more about that so that you can have conversations and hopefully be more open-handed to the people around you. Eric, the one we just finished recording, episode 6, what's it about?
Well, same-sex marriage, talking a little bit about LGBT. That was originally the topic, and then we whittled it down to specifically the political aspect of marriage equality and same-sex marriage.
And Hulk Hogan. We talk about Hulk Hogan in that one as well, because why not?
And what did you say?
And Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan. Oh my gosh. In my speakers, I did not hear Hulk Hogan. I heard hole hugging, and I was like, I don't remember us talking about hole hugging. And then I thought, is that some slang that I don't know about that you know about? And Urban Dictionary was almost going to have to give me an answer. Now I might just have to look up if there is an answer to hole hugging. Or, hey, wherever you're listening, let us know what the definition of hole hugging should be, or don't, because maybe it's not appropriate for
It's not appropriate whatsoever. So while you look that up on Urban Dictionary, I'll tell the people about episode 7, and it is going to be about climate change and how before the fall of man, before sin entered the world, one of our first obligations that God gave us was to take care of the earth, and what that looks like moving forward for us in today. And to be completely honest with you, I don't know. That
Right.
one's going to be an interesting conversation. We haven't recorded it yet because I don't know. And so we'll talk about that. And then finally, we're going to end the season talking about what posture do we take moving forward towards politics, and how do we discuss this on most episodes, or how do we discuss this in conversations with friends and family and on the internet moving forward.
Yep. And for the most part, most of these episodes, you heard it when we talk about the abortion issue, is trying to look at it from an aspect of like, when you hear anyone say you can't be a Christian and vote for blank, these are some of the biggest issues that you hear about, or it gets lumped into that conversation. Climate change, maybe not, but for whatever reason, there's an identity politics piece being played with that. And so trying to take a look at it and go, okay, what is it that we realize? Because what we're realizing in a lot of these different areas is what we think has been like always true since the beginning of time has really only been true for a couple hundred years, if that. In some cases,
some of them only the last 40 or 50 years.
Exactly. And then other things that, we think are true and good have an underlying hint of whether it's racism or white supremacy or other sort of power grabs that somewhere along the way the church has been co-opted into, or has been, political bedfellows, to use terminology, with something that's like not really a great situation that the church never was meant to be in alignment with.
And I'd say we're going to stick to 30 or 40 minutes like we normally do, but we don't. A lot of these episodes are 45 minutes to an hour because we're talking about nuanced issues, and we're also trying to give you all the historical context. So these episodes are packed heavy, but I really do think you will enjoy them because they are about issues of today, and they are fair, and they're fair and unbalanced. No, we're not Fox News, but what they are is open-handed and acknowledging the Christian liberty that we have in our faith as we look at applying it to government. Last thing before we go, we'll get you out of here on this. Eric, do you want to tell them our secret?
Our secret is, oh no, not that secret. Our secret is that we've got merch. We just recently launched some merch. So if you want to proudly proclaim that you've survived purity culture and you want to do it with a tank top or a crop top, even, we would love
I
to
added
have
crop
you.
top hoodies in there this week for the girls.
Oh yes, crop top hoodies. I'm so glad. I can't wait to show off my sexy belly button in that new crop top hoodie. Between that, or if you were a church camp dodgeball or volleyball champion and you never got a T-shirt for it, guess what? You can have one now. Or the bottom line is, what we're trying to do with this season and all seasons, the same thing, is trying to find the good in the situation. And so, as much as we're joking around about the merch, but our theme is finding the good. We want to be able to find the good and move on from here. And in this season, my hope for all of you, and I think Jonathan's is too, is like, can we break down the polarization and the idea that I have to hold on to these values with a tight fist? And if I admit if I admit my viewpoint may be a gray area, or maybe wrong in a slight area, or maybe I, don't have to fight it so hard, then all of a sudden, like, every piece of my political and religious viewpoint crumbles. Like, we can approach these things with nuance, and we can approach these things in a messy and organic way as well.
And we can disagree.
And we can
still
disagree.
follow Jesus together.
Correct.
First episode comes out next week, September 12th. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, share it with a friend so that you're ready next week when the first one comes out. If you want to talk to us, hey, we didn't say the merch is at unlearningyouthgroup.com. We probably should say that. And if you want to talk to us about anything, hello at unlearningyouthgroup.com. Eric's at EricW712 on all the major platforms. I am at Jonathan_Caron on them as well.
Argue with us on TikTok. Well, maybe not Jonathan. Argue with me on TikTok.
I'm fine with the arguments.
If you disagree,
give me the engagement.
Let me know.
Yeah, we want to hear from you. We want this to be a conversation. We really think it's going to be a fun next 2 months for all of us. So we'll see you next week with our first episode on politics, government, and how we approach the entire thing. Hope you have a great week. See you next week.
Damn, I'm glad I didn't begin high school, 'cause my best days will be in the